Welcome to Daily Dose Radio, a 5-minute devotional podcast studying the Psalms verse by verse. Broadcast from the ever-beautiful Sharonville, Ohio, on the sunny side of Cincinnati. Welcome back to Daily Dose Radio. I'm so glad you've joined me today as we look at Psalm 119, verses 71 and 72. So glad to have all my listeners coming in from all sorts of places all over the world. This is your favorite Bible bakery on the internet. We serve it up fresh and delicious every day. Can't you just smell the goodness cooking in the kitchen today? And we've got two good verses today, verses 71 and 72, our subjects today. And man alive, this is going to be a good study because he says, let me just read for you 71, 72. This is my translation. It is good for me when I am afflicted, so that I might understand your statutes. The law of your mouth is good for me, more than thousands of gold and silver. See, isn't that just lovely? And listen to what he has to say here. Very first thing we don't agree with, right? The very first thing he says, it is good for me when I'm afflicted. And we all with one voice say, no, it's not good for me when I'm afflicted. It hurts. I don't like affliction. But it is good for us. And why does he say it's good for us? Look at the next phrase. So that I might understand your statutes. Oh, understanding is what we had in the second verse of this section, verse 66. Teach me good discretion and understanding. So that's my prayer in verse 66, and now it's fulfilled in verse 71 after affliction. It's good for me when I'm afflicted, so that I might understand. Understanding comes through affliction. Understanding is good. Understanding also, or affliction also helps us to do what? To keep the word. Look at verse 67. Before I was afflicted, I committed sin. Well, I think we could probably say, in light of what we've learned this week, before I was afflicted, my heart was gross like fat, and it didn't flow, because it had been stopped up with the sin that so easily corrupts us, that holds us down, you see. Before I was afflicted, I committed sin, but now I keep your word. What's the but now? Well, we understand the but now as after the affliction has come. So affliction, before it, I'm a sinner. My heart is gross like fat. I probably walk with the perverse. But now, what happens? Well, it's good for me when I'm afflicted, because when that happens, I'm understanding something. I'm understanding your statutes, or the precepts, or the law, or your word, whatever the psalmist uses here. And of course here it is statutes. So affliction is good for me. That's number one. Number two is verse 72. The law of your mouth is good for me, more than thousands of gold and silver. The law of your mouth is good for me. So affliction is good for me. The law of your mouth is good for me. Or we might say the law of your favor. We might even say the law of your grace. Because sometimes that word mouth can be translated favor. Sometimes it can be translated graciousness, not necessarily grace, but graciousness. The law of your mouth, the law of your graciousness. But, the idea is this is God's word. This is his law. And if the law is good for me, then what am I to be doing with it? Well, I'm to be keeping it. It should be in my mouth. And it's so good for me that it's better than. The law of your mouth is good for me more than. And we could translate that more than, better than. It's better to me than. But we'd have to supply the to me to have that translation. But, like I said, my translation is a little wooden. The law of your mouth is good for me more than thousands of gold and silver. And insert there, if you want, pieces or monies or whatever. But thousands of gold and silver. Imagine that. A stack of gold and silver pieces. And the psalmist looks at that, and then he looks over to the other side, and he sees the law of the Lord, and he says, that is better for me than all of that money. How wonderful that is. It's good for me to be afflicted, and the law of the Lord is good for me, even better for me than if I had stacks and stacks of money. How great. So we end this 9th division in Psalm 119, the division about good, with two statements about what's good for me, your law and affliction. Join me next week as we engage in a little reveling on the 3rd year of Daily Dose Radio. Thanks for listening to Daily Dose Radio. I'm David Smith. The music today has been performed by the Bluegrass Experiment. Thanks again for listening. I'll see you next time on Daily Dose Radio.